Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by, as always. Let me start with some macro thoughts. The Bundesbank is saying that high-frequency trading can enhance volatility. That's been as clear as a bell for eternity. Currency volatility fell to the lowest level this year. JP Morgan Chase and Company Global Currency Volatility Index fell to 9.3%, reaching the lowest level since December the 8th. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index rose 0.1% and reached the strongest level since March 16. You remember when the dollar was down and I was saying I expected it to recover? We've largely recovered. My target was 100. It's a little bit tired now, but let's see whether we can push on from here. Home thoughts. I do collect new fascinations and crawl through new wormholes. This is Jonathan Lethem, a very good writer. I like these tweets from Patrick Gaspard, who's the US ambassador to South Africa. Jacarandas drape saucily from the heavens by day, and their petals are shimmering stars underfoot at night. Like this as well by Roy Lichtenstein, a double mirror from 1970. The Independent is reporting that strange messages are coming from the stars and are probably from aliens. Scientists have heard hugely unusual messages from deep in space that they think are coming from aliens. A new analysis of strange modulations in a tiny set of stars appears to indicate that it could be coming from extraterrestrial intelligence that is looking to alert us to their existence. The new study reports the finding of specific modulations in just 234 out of the 2.5 million stars that have been observed during a survey of the sky. The work found that a tiny fraction of them seemed to be behaving strangely. That took me back to Martin Amos's November 2011 piece in the New Yorker, Laureate of Terror, Don DeLillo's Prophetic Soul. Let me go back to that here. I've read it to you before, but I love it so much. The specialist is monitoring data on his mission console when a voice breaks in, a voice that carried with it a strange and unspecifiable poignancy. He checks in with his flight dynamics and conceptual paradigm officers at Colorado Command, and we ask ourselves, has there ever been a more distinctive exponent of dialogue than Don DeLillo? We have a deviate tomahawk. We copy, there's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We are clearing an outframe to locate the source. Thank you, Colorado. It is probably just selective noise. You are negative red on the step function quad. It was a voice, I told them. We have just received an affirm on selective noise. We will correct, Tomahawk. In the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pidgin, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. Somehow we are picking up signals from radio programs of 40, 50, 60 years ago. Powerful, isn't it? And let me give you one last thought. Temporal bandwidth, it's the width of your present, your now. It is the familiar, considered as a dependent variable. The more you dwell in the past and in the future, the thicker your bandwidth, the more solid your persona. But the narrower your sense of now, the more tenuous you are. Britain's happy to sacrifice trade for fewer foreigners, poll says, and that's a fact. And I observed this when I was there last, that they've crossed a threshold in this respect. Britons are more concerned with controlling immigration than maintaining access to the single market, according to a survey published Tuesday, adding further evidence that Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit strategy is in line with the prevailing prevailing mood of the country. As Britain prepares to exit the European Union, over half of adults polled cite an influx of foreigners as more worrisome than losing EU trade benefits. And the poll conducted by Survation Limited for ITV plc, 58% of respondents said they approve of May's handling of the divorce, with only a quarter saying that they disapproved. This is an observation I made a few weeks ago when I said the language of Brexit is very hard-edged because of this point, and is not considering the impact on the financial markets at all. Sterling pound has become a prisoner of the hard-edged rhetoric. According to Bloomberg Politics, President Obama knew of the video of Trump boasting of sexual advances would change the presidential race. Says he knew right away the video of Donald Trump crudely describing unwanted advances on women would change the presidential election. The president said on ABC TV's Jimmy Kimmel Live on Monday night that he listened to the Republican presidential nominee's comments on October the 7th, the day the video was made public by the Washington Post. Obama said that if an ordinary office worker had a similar video come out, it would be a problem for him, and he's not running for president. Trump has said the 2005 video amounted to locker room talk and that he never undertook the actions he described, although a series of women subsequently accused the billionaire businessman of inappropriately groping them. He has denied the allegations. The president used his late-night appearance to mock Trump during Kimmel's mean tweet segment. Obama read a missive from Trump declaring that Obama would go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States. Well, Donald Trump, at least I will go down as the president of the United States, Obama shot back. I concluded by saying a cleverly placed trap this was. And I think, the Clinton, Obama all knew that no one was going to sort of touch on this issue ahead of it coming out, just simply because it's the court of Donald Trump. And essentially I call it the Bill Clinton boomerang. For Putin, once dismissed by the White House as a regional player, the long shadow he has cast over the elections is a triumph. With the US now threatening unspecified retaliation, Putin could be at risk of overplaying his hand, alienating the incoming administration if Trump loses. But with the ties strained, the Kremlin may reckon it has little to lose. Relations with Clinton have been frosty since at least 2011, when Putin accused the then Secretary of State of encouraging protesters to take to the streets in opposition to his rule. Keeping the Kremlin at the center of a chaotic US campaign is a big propaganda win for the Kremlin. Putin and Russia have become practically the central themes of the American election, says Alexei Chesnakov. That, of course, is beneficial since it underlines the status of the country and its leader. Very interesting video that Nick Mutetti linked me to, Putin's warning, but is anyone listening? Nobody hears of it. Parade on Red Square from 1927. And it seems that history is very secular and we're back to the days of the Red Menace. New York Times, Sheikh Khalifa bin Hamad Al Thani, former Emir of Qatar, dies at the age of 84. He was deposed by his son, something that a lot of the media is not reporting. Christina Day, more ISIS dressed in women's clothes, fleeing Mosul among civilians. And then somebody else had tweeted, female Peshmerga on the front line, taking the fight to the fascists who tried to make them their slaves. I thought it was rather an interesting juxtaposition. Venezuela's President Maduro makes an unscheduled visit to the Vatican and is received by the Pope, and then subsequently apparently there's some kind of dialogue between him and the opposition, with the Pope playing a role. The opposition candidate, Enrique Capriles, said, "I hope the deadbeat visiting in Rome doesn't make a joke of Pope Francis and listens to him carefully." Interesting piece in the FT, Iran inside the battle to succeed the supreme leader Ali Khamenei. Very interesting piece, also talking about how Khamenei really cries during public speeches. So when state media showed him bursting into tears at a March meeting of the Experts Assembly, the clerical body tasked with choosing his successor should he die during its 8-year term, viewers found it shocking. Infiltration into Iran's political system is a serious plot by Americans, he told senior clerics. The infiltration has targeted officials to make decisions that the US pursues and make people change belief in political Islam. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro dollar 108.84, dollar index 98.73, Japanese yen 104.42, Swiss franc 0.9942, the pound 122.25, the Aussie getting a little bit of a lift. Last time I looked, 0.67635, India rupee 66.885, South Korean won 1137.06, the Rial 312.45. That's had a real big rebound when you think about it. The Egyptian pound 887.83, meaningless number. Look at the black market rate, which is above 14. South Africa rand firming up because Gordon looks as if he's winning, 13.9070. Dollar index, I'll put up a 1-year chart. We're at a 7-month high. My target at the beginning of the year was 100. We're not too far off that now. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 1-year chart of that as well, looking as if we're about to break down and head towards parity, 108.84 last. Bitcoin hits a 3-month high as yuan extends a 6-year low. Talking about flight money out of China going into Bitcoin. Gold, let me check where that is, 1266.94, firming up off the 1250 level, but still 1300 is, I think, impossible resistance. WTI crude oil, $50.66, dipped below 50 briefly yesterday. Emerging markets, Tata Sons in turmoil after chairman's bizarre ousting. Ratan Tata took back control of India's biggest conglomerate after Chairman Cyrus Mistry abruptly ended his 4-year reign over the $100 billion coffee to steel business empire. Tata, who's 78, will be the interim head of the group, while a panel appointed by the company searches for a replacement. Mistry 48 was named to replace Tata as chairman in December 2012. This is just too bizarre that the chairman of the biggest industrial group in the country has been removed in such an arbitrary manner, said Gaurang Shah, vice president of BNP Paribas in Mumbai. Quite a big development in the Indian business scene. Africa tilts as winners emerge from the commodity slump. East African countries are integrating into a robust regional market as energy exporters on the other side of the continent struggle to find growth. Most African economies, though, aren't in the oil business. For them, lower fuel costs support growth and living standards, so fortunes are set to diverge across the continent. In fact, the narrative could change from Africa rising to Africa tilting, as commodity exporters in West, Central and Southern Africa struggle to find new sources of growth, while East African economies develop and integrate into a more robust and potentially huge regional market. From 2010 to 2014, economic growth in Sub-Saharan Africa averaged 5.2%. After oil prices plunged in 2014, growth slowed to 3.4% in 2015. It's likely to be weaker still in 2016, but the decline in aggregate terms largely reflects slowdowns in Nigeria, fellow oil exporter Angola and South Africa. The three countries accounted for about 60% of Sub-Saharan African GDP in 2015, but less than 30% of its population. Deeper integration, better functioning markets, improved infrastructure could all bear fruit as the continent pursues other sources of growth. East Africa is leading the way. The African Development Bank, in its inaugural African Regional Integration Index report, rated the East African community, Burundi, Kenya, Rwanda, South Sudan, Tanzania, and Uganda, as the top performing regional economic community on the continent. And I wrote about this in February this year when I said Kenya and East Africa on the rise. as the rest of sub-Saharan Africa slumps. And I said, for a while I've been saying that Kenya and East Africa looks like a bright star in what increasingly looks like a darkening sub-Saharan African sky. I like this Zuma limerick by Ray Harley. There was an old man called Zuma, whose empire grew like a tumour. When Gordon said no, he suffered a blow, so he charged him over a rumour. South African all shares up 1.95% this year. Dollar rand firming up 13.90 last. It's firming up on the sense that Gordon has bested the president this time round. Egyptian EGX 30 plus 17.44% this year. Interesting piece in the FT. Young people in Nigeria put their dreams on hold. It is hard to think of a country in Africa where young people are not fed up. The continent will have the world's largest working population by 2034, but economic growth is not keeping pace. There's no doubt this generation needs more leaders to believe in. They will have to be men and women who give them reasons to think that they can realize their dreams at home, not on the far side of the Mediterranean. The Nigerian all shares down 3.73% this year. The Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index is down 12.15% this year. Have a look at this City Prosperity Index for selected African cities. Interesting reading. Most multinationals have a city-based strategy these days when they're trying to attack the African market. NSE listed Atlas doubts return to London Bourse after suspension. Atlas African Industries says it is doubtful of a return to the London Stock Exchange, where it was suspended on October 17 following the resignation of its nominated advisor. Company also halted trading on the NSE's growth enterprise market segment the next day, making the stock illiquid for existing and prospective shareholders. Atlas Industries is down about 50% year to date after tumbling a huge amount previous year. My piece over the weekend was consequences intended or unintended. I was saying it's been about 2 months since the president assented to the interest rate capping bill, and that was after interest rate limits were eliminated in July 1991. I made several points, but one of them was that Tier 2 and Tier 3 banks have been topped and tailed real good with this corridor, and that fundamental bias is in favor of the big banks. They can turn up the lending volume, others can't. I told everyone to keep an eye out on credit to the private sector, which has been slowing sharply. Last registered a 7.07% year-on-year rise through July 2016 versus levels above 20% through July 2015. I said another consequence is that the Act surely accelerates consolidation in the banking sector. The deposit flight to quality post the Imperial Bank and Dubai Bank developments, coupled with the caps and floors, have surely made consolidation all but inevitable. However, merging suboptimal balance sheets will not necessarily work. There is a requirement to infuse more equity capital. One of the consequences, and this is what consequence I was asking whether it was intended or unintended, is that the government of Kenya is reconfiguring its maturity profile, previously quite lumpy, very effectively. A huge demand for government paper, which is considered risk-free on the bank's balance sheets. And then I concluded by saying the market is betting that if anyone can, Michael can. The recovery in Kenya Airways' share price has been entirely correlated to Michael Joseph's quick accession to the chairman's position of the airline. The share price has ramped 50% higher over 4 short weeks. It's actually 69.44% now. I said there's a big job to be done at the airline, which spans cancelling all fuel hedging, proper oversight over forex and treasury and much more. Optimizing the balance sheet needs someone real, credible at the head of future negotiations. And the market is betting that if anyone can, Michael can. Kenya Airways up 69.44% over 4 weeks. Nairobi All Share was up 0.75% yesterday. It's down 6.1% this year. NSE 20 is down 20.45% year to date. Safaricom will report earnings early November, firmed 1.52% to close at 20. Buyers outpaced sellers in which confirms its further upside traction. Kenya Airways surged 7.96% to close at a fresh 2016 high of 610. Has registered a parabolic 69.44% price rebound over the last 4 weeks. The price surge is a serious signal in the noise. Sidian Bank, formerly known as Puret Bank, it's not listed at the stock exchange, but announced that it has embarked on a voluntary retirement scheme. This is surely a harbinger of things to come in the smaller banks as they right-size their operations. Sidian, majority owned by Centum, is moving, I suppose, with some dispatch. Equity was up 0.81%. Standard Chartered firmed the shilling. It's up 16% on a total return basis this year, the only share in the banking segment to be up year to date. EABL was actively traded, closed unchanged at 272. Kengen, which fell sharply after the release of its full year earnings and fell 13.77% on Friday, stabilized yesterday, closed unchanged at 595. Share price reaction on Friday was overcooked in part because of the dividend pass and an optically big dividend payment to the GOK. Share price remains undervalued, but management needs to start promoting the investor story. Beacons, which was down 58% since it was listed through yesterday morning, slumped another 9.72% to close at a record low. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by.